Thank you, Jasper. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us tonight. Appreciate that you are here, and thank you for your time and attention, and also for those of you who are watching later. So as we are going on this journey, exploring this book, and for those of you that have attended the previous sessions, we are just going through the theoretical components of each chapter of the book. And if you want more information on the book itself, you're welcome to contact me, or the book is available at the majority of the main bookstores and on Takealot and on Amazon. So last week we looked at entering your meta world. Last time we looked at entering your meta world, and this was all about metacognition and emotional intelligence and how using that to optimize your life. Today we're going to go a bit further. We're going to now see how you can become a software developer. And with software, as I mentioned in previous sessions, this is all the mental stuff. This is your emotions, your thoughts, your feelings, your cognition, and how you can use that to influence your performance, your health, and your longevity. So now that we've had a look at some of those tools in the previous session, today we're going to start making use of them and how you can engineer your life and filling it with more meaning and purpose. So in this chapter, we're going to look at motivation. We're going to look at how to increase meaning and purpose in your daily life, and also how this can then ultimately protect you against burnout, against inflammation, disease, and then a premature death. So tonight's session is going to explore the following contents. We're going to look at meaning and purpose, PNI or psychoneuroimmunology. We're going to explore a bit of motivation, and then I'm going to share with you 6 steps to increase meaning and purpose in your own life. So I want to ask you a question. Did you know that your mental and emotional responses affect your immune system function, and therefore your disease susceptibility, your performance, and also your long-term health and longevity? So living a life with meaning and purpose is at the heart of this. And I'm going to share with you how you can use this to your benefit. So meaning and purpose really provides us with resilience. And while there are many things we can do within our lifestyles, in other words, our habits and our behaviors, that can reduce inflammation, we will look at that next time. But tonight I'm going to explore how your state of mind can influence inflammation and disease, and how you can benefit from this and to automatically increase your chances of a long and happy life. So PNI or psychoneuroimmunology is a new field of scientific medical research that studies how our immunity is influenced by our mental activity. In other words, the influences of our mind states, positive or negative, on our wellness and performance. Now, I follow Dr. Ian Weinberg, who's a South African neurosurgeon, and he's a pioneer on clinical applied PNI. And I'm a big student of his, and he uncovered that many of his cancer patients experienced life situations or events that may have resulted in a negative mindset and then a subsequent illness or disease, and in most cases, cancer. Now, I also found that addressing these negative mindsets through coaching alongside the normal medical intervention was much more effective in treating his patients than the medical interventions alone. So his research reveals that negative and destructive mind states have been shown to increase the levels of cortisol and adrenaline, which in results impacts immune suppression and increases inflammation. So this immune suppression creates vulnerability to infection and disease, while the increase in inflammation predisposes us to an exaggerated immune response, also called the cytokine storm. In the event that this situation persists chronically, enduringly, it becomes a breeding ground for a multitude of ailments, including cancers, cardiovascular and cerebrovascular disease, neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and motor neuron disease. So the negative or destructive mind states can include, but is not limited to, the following states of mind: anger, hostility, hatred, competition, fear, worry, anxiety, pain, guilt, shame, unworthiness, unforgiveness, envy, jealousy, bitterness, resentment, hopelessness, and helplessness, and the list goes on. So the interesting thing about this is that the opposite of these states are really the fruit of the Spirit, which is love, peace, joy, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. So it's really important that to understand the influence our thoughts and feelings can have, it's critical to use this and leverage this to get the most out of life. So our thoughts and feelings we experience on a regular basis are really command signals that we are sending via our nervous system to our body. And this, as I mentioned before, can be likened to the coding of your brain or your biocomputer. And your thinking and your feeling, so we are, as human beings, we are thinking, feeling beings. And we often think of them as separate, but they're actually intertwined in our neurology, and they mix up in our nervous system, and we experience the result of our thinking and feeling. So it's important to note that we have an inheritance, and we are influenced by our nature, in other words, our biological heredity, that's our DNA, our chromosomes, and then also by our nurture environment, in other words, our childhood, the place where we grow up, our parents and our preschool, primary school environment. So this inheritance that we have no real choice over has a profound influence on your subjective reality and on your outlook in life. And further on, as we go through life, we can experience trauma or loss or disappointment, and this could aggravate or worsen chronic negative states. These states could be brought about or aggravated by loss of a loved one, retrenchment, retirement, or any other significant disappointment. Then feelings of hopelessness and helplessness are often accelerated. And in many cases, they lead to the manifestation or the onset of various types of ailments and diseases. So what I want to show with this is, regardless of our inheritance, being biological or nurture environments, it is really how we choose to respond to that inheritance that gives us the freedom of having a long, healthy, happy life, or having a diseased, short, meaningless life. And as I've mentioned in some of the previous talks, that as a human being, you are really a combination of memorized sets of cognitive and emotional responses that are really your habits, made up through your beliefs and your perceptions. So these hardwired programmed attitudes and unconscious habits and behaviors that functions like the software and hardware of a computer. So your perceptions and experiences over your lifetime give you your current frames of mind, gives you your current paradigm, your worldview, etc. It becomes a filter for you to make sense of and understand the world and attribute meaning to future experiences. So therefore, these frames or these paradigms function as reality structures, and they are very powerful. And therefore, if you dwell on or repeat any thoughts or feelings, they become your way of seeing everything. They become a lens for how you view and perceive life. Okay, so just to summarize that, chronic destructive or negative mind states. It's important that I say chronic, because we all go through negative emotions, and that's part of life. But it's when they become chronic that they become destructive. For example, like stress. They cause an inflammatory response, which in turn expresses genes that causes disease and illness. Human beings can turn on the stress response by thought and feelings alone. So just by thinking of your problems, you stimulate the release of hormones and neurochemicals that can have a big effect on your life. And then thirdly, Your thoughts can make you sick. That's bad news. But the good news is your thoughts can also heal you. And it's not anything airy-fairy. We know it's scriptural, but there's also neuroscientific proof and psychoneuroimmunology proof for this effect that our emotions has on our bodies. So this is quite a complicated slide. And I took this from Dr. Ian Weinberg's work. So this is just to show that negative emotions like stress and depression, anxiety, and hostility has a tremendous effect on the body and on the brain chemistry. And just to summarize, on this neurochemistry level, what happens is if we experience negative states chronically, this increases pro-inflammatory mediators, cortisol, adrenaline, and cytokines, and this activates the amygdala. Now, the amygdala is the area of the brain responsible for fear, anxiety, panic, and rage. So you can imagine if that area of the brain is activated, you're going to experience fear, anxiety, panic, and rage. And this in turn suppresses the immune system, and it lowers dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin. This impairs prefrontal cortex function. Now, your prefrontal cortex is the area of the brain responsible for calmness, clarity, reason, and focus. And it kills the cells in the hippocampus, the center of the brain responsible for short-term memory, learning, new insights, and also responsible for stress buffering. So you can just imagine these chronically elevated levels of neurotransmitters. They stop neurogenesis. This leads to brain atrophy or deterioration. This impairs brain function. Negative mind states release a cascade of events, stimulating hormones, neurotransmitters, and parts of the brain that aggravate or worsen your subjective states. So this can lead to disease and ultimately death. So you now have a negative feedback loop in the brain and body. In other words, a negative downward spiral that starts with chronic negative mindset. Okay, now once again, the good news is if you have chemistry that can make you sick, the correct chemistry can keep you well. So, and this slide just illustrates this positive neurochemistry profile. In order to create an anti-inflammatory chemistry, you want the release of dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin in the right ratios. These chemicals are the antidote to the pro-inflammatory ones. So what happens? Positive mind states like purposeful motivation, gratification, and value contribution, they lead to an increase in these neurotransmitters, which in turn stimulates the prefrontal cortex and the nucleus accumbens and the hippocampus, while deactivating the amygdala. So this is all very beneficial for new brain cells forming and also new neural pathways forming. All these factors collectively produce more purposeful and optimistic mind states or moods, and more neurotransmitters responsible for feeling good. So on the opposite side, you have a positive feedback loop in place that brings about not only physical wellness and the lack of disease, but ultimately enhances overall wellness. So according to Dr. Ian Weinberg, this forms the golden triangle responsible for a robust immune system, maximal neuroplasticity, and a healthy long life. So in his interventions, what he does, the antidote or starting point, is to enhance purposeful motivation for his patients. So these are his cancer patients. So he enhances purposeful motivation for them. And he does that through coaching and through a few things I'll mention now. In other words, he maximizes meaning and purpose in the lives of individuals. So instead of treating already sick people, he's taken it a step further. And it is possible to prevent disease by establishing meaning and purpose in the lives of individuals before disaster strikes. So we can all take those steps today based on his research. The bottom line is that meaning and purpose impacts positively on wellness, performance, and longevity. Okay, that brings us to motivation. And on that topic, I want to ask you, what motivates you? Now, of course, this is a very interesting question because many different things motivates us and different things motivate different people. There's not a universal right or wrong answer. But this is not a motivational talk. So whose responsibility is your motivation? The reality, it's an inside-out process. And we need to depend on ourselves for understanding our motivation and harnessing it. So the reality is human beings are born motivated. We are born motivated to survive, and we are motivated to have our needs met in order to survive. And this brings me to Abraham Maslow's theory of motivation, which is still a very reliable understanding and framework for which we can look and understand motivation through. So we are motivated by meeting these needs. We satisfy these needs. And there are different stages of these needs. We have the developmental stages or the lower needs. These are our survival needs. And if they are met, we can progress up to satisfying our higher needs. Now, this is not a static process. We move around in this triangle on a regular basis. And what's important to understand is that our brains have a built-in reward circuit. And this prompts us towards behavior to start and maintain behavior that is promoting wellness, adaptation, and survival. So we have a reward circuit in place that rewards behavior that helps us to be healthy, adapt to our environment, and to survive. And this reward circuit also punishes behavior that is not conducive to survival and wellness. So we're going to focus on dopamine for tonight. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that is involved with reward. So if we are anticipating or seeking reward, it's involved with motivation, memory, it enhances learning, attention, calmness, clarity, and reason. So it's a neurotransmitter that we want to increase in our lives because it is associated with many positive attributes. And to enhance dopamine, or the conditions for enhancing dopamine, include a sense of purpose and meaning, being in pursuit of a goal or an outcome, task engagement and task mastery. So that's being engaged in anything and having a sense of mastering that task. Ongoing achievement, progress or physical forward movement, reward gratification, in other words, achieving goals. So think of dopamine as a type of a neural currency. In other words, you want to fill your bank account with dopamine, your neural bank account, by replacing your dopamine. If your dopamine levels are relatively high, you can tap into these reserves to stay motivated, focused, energized, and resilient, regardless of your circumstances. So back to Maslow's theory of motivation. So this is an expanded version of his triangle and of his theory. So as I said, these different needs motivate you. We are motivated to satisfy them. I'm not going to go into them into great detail, but I want to make a distinction. It's important that we move beyond the lower needs and apply ourselves to the higher needs if we wish to live a healthy, long, and fulfilling life. Now, the lower needs, you can say they are below the line, and they are not bad. So it's not like they're bad. We need to satisfy those needs. The needs below the line are called our social biological needs, and the needs above the line is referred to as our higher semantic or meaning needs. So we can make a distinction between the being mode and the having mode. So where we derive our motivation, meaning, and identity from is very important because we can draw it from above the line or below the line. So where you direct your attention will determine the quality of your life. Firstly, we look at the having mode. This is below the line. These are our lower needs. It's called having mode because we want to have something. We seek to get something. Here, the focus is on you. It's a very selfish place to be because you are focusing on surviving, belonging, being validated, being accepted, being liked. You want water, air, comfort, food, shelter, all these things. They're all about self-interest. And the reality is most animals share these needs with us. They are very instinctive. And it's almost like if you get stuck there, you could have a herd mentality. Here we see, if you focus on this below the line, you will live a hedonistic lifestyle. In other words, you are seeking pleasure only. And when you fulfill these needs, you get a dopamine, increase in dopamine. So it is easy to see how you can get stuck or you can get addicted on satisfying these needs. They are more tangible and mostly material. And once again, they're not wrong or bad. We need to satisfy these basic social biological needs and enjoy them. But by giving them too much meaning, we rob ourselves from tapping into the higher order needs. The reality is these are deficiency needs. In other words, when the needs are met, they go away. If you're hungry and you eat something, your hunger goes away. So these needs are deficiency. So once they're met, they go away, at least for a temporary time. Now then we get to the being mode. Now these are our higher needs, our semantic needs, our meaning needs. They are needs like maturity, autonomy, meaning, growth, development, etc. Now the thing is, if you satisfy these needs, they grow. In other words, they don't go away. They grow. They just provide more and more motivation as much as you meet those needs, and as long as you satisfy them, they become bigger. So they provide an endless source of motivation. Here you are more giving of yourself. So the focus is not so much on you, but the focus is a bit more on others. And the reality is, meeting these needs or satisfying them are not instrumental. So you can survive without them. You can even be happy, but you probably won't thrive. The reality is that focusing your eyes above and not below often involves some discomfort or growing pains, and that's often why it's avoided. I refer to this as unexplored territory. Now, the danger is in today's life, it's easy for us to get stuck below the line. And the reality is, if we keep our orientation below the line, we limit our potentials. So we get mixed up and we get confused easily in today's life, and we remain stuck. We try to satisfy our being, in other words, our higher needs within the having or lower mode. So if you want status, you buy a watch. And if you actually want love, then you pursue or seek sex. So we are confused within these two modes. And the more your attention is focused on your deficiency or lower needs, the more you will consume, thinking that your higher needs will be met. Welcome to greed, gluttony, consumerism, and really being stuck in survival mode. And I really believe that the world or the enemy keeps us focused on these deficiency needs. And he either does this by keeping us stuck in poverty so that we are really literally just have a focus on surviving from one day to the next, or otherwise the other extreme. He gives us too much, or the world gives us too much, and we focus on greed, gluttony, and consumerism. Our focus remains below the line because we don't look at our higher needs. We just hoard and consume and cannot have enough. And we see that in the world around us today. So when people know that their higher needs will be met through what they do on a daily basis, they become intrinsically motivated, and they don't need external prompts, coercion, or rewards to be motivated. So that is very important for self-motivation and for team motivation, understanding the why or the meaning behind things. Okay, this brings us to 6 steps for increasing meaning and purpose. I'm going to go through these 6 steps with you, And these steps, if you start applying them, they will actually make a shift in your neurocircuitry. So that those slides of the positive and negative neurocircuitry that I shared with you earlier, with an increase in dopamine, oxytocin, and serotonin, this is what these activities or these habits will affect in your internal side, and it will reduce inflammation and enhances personal wellness, motivation, and performance, and increases neuroplasticity. So it's worthwhile taking note of these activities and apply them in your own life. First one is having a personal mission statement. And without making this any longer than what it needs to be, this is really just an answer about who you are, like your identity, where are you headed, what you value in life. So it's sort of a value determination as well. And what gives you meaning. Now, there are certain questions you can ask to elicit this, but it's important to have a personal mission statement. Next step is to exchange gratitude. Now, when most of us think of a gratitude practice, it is sort of pop culture to write things down that we are grateful or thankful for. Now, if you're doing this, there's nothing wrong with it. Keep on doing it. And I think as Christians, we should be daily be grateful for all our blessings, and we should be thanking our Creator for that. But it's interesting to note that the research illustrates that being thankful doesn't have a big impact on your own neurocircuitry. This is according to neuroscientist and psychologist Antonio Damasio. He found that you need to be on the receiving end of gratitude for it to have an impact. In other words, by giving thanks, you are more capable of affecting the others around you as opposed to affecting your own. So you need to receive it. If you give it to others, then obviously they will have the beneficial effects. So being grateful doesn't really affect your own neurochemistry. You need to receive it. But in order to receive gratitude from others, obviously you need to do something to earn it. So the easiest way to receive gratitude or thanks is by acting in ways to deserve it. So acts of kindness and altruism will, of course, have that effect. The fruit of the Spirit again. So therefore, contributing value is very important, and we'll get to that in a moment. So an interesting second aspect that came from this research was that the subjects who observed a story or narrative, in other words, they were even watching a movie or reading a book or observing someone else exchanging gratitude. In other words, so they were a third party. This showed a big shift in neurochemistry. It reduced fear, anxiety, and suppressed survival circuitry. So to duplicate these results, you can either watch a book, read a book, watch a film, or observe someone else giving gratitude to someone else, and sincere, genuine exchange in gratitude. And what was also very interesting was after I read this research, I thought to myself, like, this is exactly what happens if you read the Gospels, because if you look at the life of Jesus, you really see how through what he did and through how he lived, our people were immensely gratitude, and that changed their lives. So if you just read the Gospel, this will have the same effect on your neurochemistry if you observe the gratitude displayed by other people in the Gospels. Okay, this brings us to step 3, empathy. Now, empathy is really described as the capacity to understand what it is like to experience another person's frame of reference. In other words, the capacity to place yourself in another's position. It's your ability to tune into someone else's feelings, states, moods, etc. Now, without the ability to empathize, it'll be difficult to sincerely exchange or observe gratitude. Empathy allows us to enter the world of another and experience their motives, feelings, intentions. Now, the better you are at empathizing, the more benefit you will get from an exchange in gratitude. So this effect is multiplied if empathy is given as well as received. To sincerely and honestly enter the world of someone else, to see and experience life through their eyes, this will in itself broaden your perspective and your subjective reality, giving you an opportunity to learn how to view things through a different light. You'll also realize how different life could be for you, for the worse, and fill you with a sense of gratitude. So you can't force people to you can't make them show you gratitude or empathy. It won't work. So a very powerful way is to invite this type of behavior is through value contribution, which is our step number 4. So one way in which you can elicit this type of behavior from others is by sincerely contributing value to your ecosystem. Now, what I mean with value contribution in this context, it's leaving something in a better condition than what you found it. So this includes and is not limited to physical spaces, environments, interactions with yourself or others, and with situations. So you can really contribute value to yourself, to other people, and to the environment. So whenever you have the opportunity to engage with this world, why not leave an impression? Leave something positive behind that will make people think and respond with gratitude and empathy. This can be an interaction with anyone, with a waiter, a cleaner, a colleague, a friend, someone in need of help, or just someone that passes you by on the street. So it really is interesting to see that there's a big knock-on effect between value contribution, gratitude, and empathy. It's actually very beautiful and obvious. So by living an intentional life imbued with meaning and purpose, you will contribute value to yourself. If you are fulfilling your potential, you will by default be in a better position to contribute value to people around you and the environments you inhabit. Cultivating your own potential will bring about positive social change at large, and this will serve purpose for the greater good. And that brings us to step 5, which is setting goals or exploring unknown territory, getting out of the comfort zone. The purpose of this step is to incorporate more meaningful elements into your life experience, to give yourself the opportunities to perceive more of your environment and broaden your spectrum of interest. This will help you build bigger and more accurate map of reality. Here are some ways to explore new territory. Opportunities to meet new people. Exposing yourself to new environments like interest groups, hobbies, or activities. Reading books that fall outside the normal scope of interest for you. Doing something that is outside your comfort zone. Going on an adventure. And of course, setting goals. So by having goals, we are moving towards and achieving something of personal significance, and we experience personal gratification. Increasing your purposeful motivation, which is the antidote to inflammation and burnout and disease, comes from pursuing meaningful life goals and purposeful activities. In doing this, you'll experience a sense of achievement and associated reward gratification, and this will increase dopamine. This comes from engaging in a task and the subsequent mastering of that task. When we experience this, if we have goals and challenges in our environment that are matched by our skills. This means we experience success from time to time, and we learn from our mistakes. Now, the 3 main areas of life in which I suggest people set goals is work and career, or application, what you do for a living most of the time. Then also interpersonal or relationships, and then in your recreation or hobby or your home life. And I have a goal setting course on my website that I can share with you if you send me an email that takes you through a 20-minute template how to set goals in your life. So if any one of you wants to do that, just send me an email. So this safeguards your life. If you set goals in various areas, if one area was to collapse, you would still have a strong and robust immune system if you have other things to live for outside that specific sphere of interest. So that's why it's important to have goals in different areas of life and not put all your eggs in one basket, so to say. The last step is step 6, which is living in the present. And that means just to savor the journey as much as the destination. So while it's extremely important to have outcomes and goals, you should not only be focused on achieving them. In other words, you should enjoy the journey and the steps that you are taking in pursuit of the goal. The reality is that as soon as you achieve a goal, the game collapses and you have to get a new goal or a revised goal. In other words, the top of one mountain is always the base of another. If you're only chasing outcomes, you miss out on life. And people often say to themselves, I will be happy if I have X, or I will be happy if I achieve Y, then I'll be happy, then I'll rest, and then I'm done. But in doing so, we miss out on the reward of the experience itself. By living in the present, I mean not to spend too much time in your mind thinking about the past or the future, but rather being anchored in the present, in the here and now. We often time travel mentally without realizing it, and stress is often a byproduct of not being present and mindful. Examples of living in the future could be fear of what tomorrow may bring or desiring something else in what you currently have. Both leave you feeling worse off. Living in the past could be dwelling on mistakes, causing resentment, regret, unforgiveness, or other negative feelings. It's possible to go through most of life in this time-traveling mode. And by doing so, you miss out on many of your current experiences. Having a non-judgmental awareness can help you to be present. And being non-judgmental is just exactly that. It's an awareness that really consists of being aware of your internal sensations and thoughts, feelings and emotions, external perceptions in the current moment without evaluating or without judging it as good or bad. So this practice can improve self-knowledge, physical and mental well-being. The thing is, as soon as we label something as good or bad, this activates your evaluating brain and takes you out of the present moment and into your mind. So it's a skill to learn to let go of the inclination to judge yourself, to judge your behavior, or to judge what is happening around you. It doesn't happen automatically. How this happens and how this takes place is we have a thought or a feeling in response to the judgment. So once you've judged something, then you have a thought and a response to it, and that takes you out of presence into internal dialogue. And just there and then you lose touch with the present experience. In this way, judgments become self-fulfilling prophecies. When they are repeated often enough, they become rigid and turn into convictions and rigid frames of mind. And then they live up to the expectations you set. Then you perceive things as you judge them, and that becomes a frame. And now you're seeing the world as you judged or labeled it, and not as it truly is. So becoming aware of how being constantly judgmental can rob you from a fresh experience or learning something new about yourself or others in the world you live in. Further to this, setting time aside to reflect by journaling, relaxing, breathing, meditating, praying, all of these ways are tools to help you to be more anchored in the present. So as we are going through this, if you apply what you learn here and what I share in the book, you're actually cultivating and improving your emotional intelligence. So it's a skill and it's a intelligence that you can actually increase if you work on it. So by now you have a better understanding of your own mental software and how your thoughts and feelings code and program your life. So this the nifty thing about this knowledge is that you also have a better understanding and awareness of how all human beings function. Your partner, your boss, your friends, everyone around you. So now that you understand how complex people are and that the actions and the words we observe of one another is really just the tip of the iceberg, there's so much that is hidden from sight. Other people's intentions, desires, motives, pain, trauma, their nature, heredity, their genetic code, their afflictions, their pain, how they are conditioned to respond in the same old way, and how they find it hard to change, how their thoughts and their feelings and habits and memories and internal mapping keep them stuck in certain states and frames that produce the behaviors that you see. So other people's behavior will oftentimes have a positive intent, even if it comes across as self-centered, but to themselves, they are trying to solve a problem or satisfy a need. Maybe they don't know any better. Maybe their maps and their software is outdated and expired. So the majority of other people's motives, of our motives, operate outside of our awareness. For others to see things your way is pretty challenging, realizing that we are all navigating from a different subjective map. So the idea that each and every one of us is experiencing life from a unique perspective should actually be quite a revelation, and that everyone experiences life through different eyes. So this knowledge of knowing this, this puts you in a very powerful position to experience more patience, more empathy, with less judgment towards others, because you have a better idea of what's going on in the background. These are tools for improved social awareness and relationship management, which are really two of the important elements of emotional intelligence. So I'm going to leave you with that message. Meaning and purpose really safeguards us against inflammation and disease. By applying these steps, you can cultivate mind states that strengthen your immune system to help you thrive. And you can take those tools and use them as skills to go on forward for success. Thank you very much. That is tonight's session.